Prime Minister, we're here in New York, but we've come straight from the Labour Party conference.
Yes.
Your Homes for Heroes announcement has interested GBNews viewers. How will you ensure that veterans get priority over, say, asylum seekers?
Well, look, this is a very important commitment that we've made because too many veterans who have, given so much their country, find themselves without a roof over their head. So because we've taken the difficult decisions on planning, decisions that were not taken for years, we can guarantee that they will have a roof over their heads. So Homes for Heroes becomes a reality and not just a slogan.
Ahead of other groups, so importantly.
Yeah, that will require regulation to be passed to make that priority. But it's not ahead of all other groups. This is unlocking, a real step forward on homelessness for many people who are homeless, including, as I was able to announce yesterday, care leavers who are very, very vulnerable, and of course victims of domestic abuse who find themselves without a roof over their head. So yes, it's a very important announcement for veterans, but actually by unlocking and turbocharging the housing, then that allows us to take a big step in relation to homelessness. And I'm very pleased we're able to do it so quickly.
You want to cut migration. What level on the net legal migration are you comfortable with? Under 100,000 a year?
I'm not going to put a number on it, but it needs to come down. I think anybody looking at the numbers would say that is too high. And what I'm very concerned about is that if you look at apprenticeship starts for certain skills, they've gone down in recent years at the very same time that visas for those same skills have gone up.
That's employers being lazy, not finding the UK workforce.
I think it's a combined responsibility. I think government, employers, businesses, we need to address it. It is not sensible in anybody's book to have apprenticeship starts going down in the UK only to then have more visas for people coming into the UK. So this is how I do politics, the practical business. How do you get these numbers down? Sort your skills agenda.
So being practical, how will you understand and show your understanding the concerns that are legitimate about immigration in white working class communities? Will you go and dispatch Angela Rayner to speak to people about it?
Well, of course. I mean, we're across the country all the time. I don't know how many discussions with people about immigration. And they're important discussions because, as I said in my conference speech yesterday, I do understand people have legitimate concerns about immigration and we should debate them. And where they say to me, we think migration is too high, then I tend to agree with that. And the reason is among the reasons is because of the skills failure over the last years, and we need to fix that. I think this is a healthy discussion. I don't think it should be something that we shy away from. But what I won't do is allied that with the thuggery on the streets, because I think people who are genuinely concerned about immigration aren't and should not be.
So people are worried are not far right, are they? They're not worried, but they're not far right individuals if they're worried about immigration.
No, absolutely not.
No, quite.
Many people across the country are concerned about immigration, but they wouldn't for a minute go onto the street and throw a brick at a police officer. And I think it is wrong to pretend that they are one and the same. They are not.
Your conference in Liverpool, while we're here, has voted against the winter fuel payment cut. So the policy is wrong, isn't it? Why are you doing it?
Well, look, I understand why colleagues in the Labour movement feel very strongly about this. Conference policy doesn't make government policy, and we've had to take a difficult decision because...
So you'll defy them? You'll defy the vote?
Well, last government left a £22 billion black hole. Unaccounted for, off the books. We've got to deal with that. That means tough decisions. But the reason that this is so important is we want to and will stabilise the economy. That means the triple lock is guaranteed. And that means that for pensioners, in addition to the £900 extra this year, there's £460 next year, and so on and so forth throughout the term of a Labour government, so that we can say to pensioners, you will be better off with a stable economy. You will be better off with a Labour government that stabilises the economy.
You want to be a serious government, one of purpose and service. So why is your domestic violence minister at the karaoke last night singing "Hit Me Baby One More Time"? I mean, how does that look to pensioners and to veterans worrying about their homes?
I think the commitment we've made on violence against women and girls is really important. And I think we should talk more about it, because I dealt with this when I was Director of Public Prosecutions. And I know, and you know, that only 1 in 10 victims of domestic violence feels confident enough to come forward to report what's happened. We've made a big government commitment, which is to halve violence against women and girls. That is really hard, and I'm totally focused on that 24/7.
But partying Labour ministers at the same time as you're preaching a funereal message in your speech yesterday, does that tally?
Well, look, I think in the end, if you're a victim of domestic violence, what you want to know is your Prime Minister, is your government absolutely committed to something which will make a material difference? The additional thing there, of course, is that one of the announcements I made yesterday was in relation to victims of domestic abuse and who are homeless,
yes,
and making sure they've got a roof over their head.
You want to ban smoking in pub gardens, maybe limit pub opening hours. Are we set for 5 years of nanny state under Labour?
Let me deal with the second of those straight away. We are not altering opening hours in pubs, so you can go there.
Relief for us all.
When you get back to the UK, you can go for last orders, as I will from time to time. So let me just put that one back in the box. But on smoking, look, we've got to look across the range at how we reduce deaths from smoking, the imposition and the cost to the NHS. So we're looking at a range of options, and we'll obviously consult on them.
Yeah. In terms of freebies, if I can call them those things, you need a £20,000 flat so your son can do revision. It makes you look out of touch to many people. A Labour MP for South Shields, Emma Buck, gives her freebies to charity. She gives them away. Why won't you give things you've had for free back to charity or to a good cause?
Well, all that happened is I wanted somewhere safe and quiet for my son to do his GCSE preparation. I needed it to be secure because of the situation we were in. No exchange of money. There's nothing to give away. Somebody said, well, I'll lend you my place.
But it's worth £20,000.
Yeah, but that then what happens, as you know, with declarations is people say, well, I know there was no money exchange. I know you didn't pay and nobody paid you. There's no money to give elsewhere. But we will sort of not make up, but we will say what would be the amount of money should it have been given on a commercial rate, which it wasn't. Now, that's a perfectly sort of legitimate way to do it. But, there was no money exchange.
It was
simply somebody saying, if you want somewhere quiet for your son to study whilst he's doing your GCSE, you can use this place here.
Yes. And just finally, looking at your record as the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mohammed Al-Fayed was not prosecuted for sexual assault against a 15-year-old woman when you were DPP. Have you reflected on that? Do you want to apologise to the victim? You were head of the prosecutorial service at the time.
Well, I've not. That particular case didn't come across my desk. It was dealt with by senior lawyers within the Crown Prosecution Service, and I don't think I certainly haven't had access to the file again. I'm not sure you have. So,
But an apology from the CPS?
Well, look, having not had access to the file myself or yourself, then we're not in that place.
So, Keir Starmer, thank you for joining us on GBNews. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was Chris Hope with the Prime Minister. We'll discuss more on that later, but first, let's cross now to New York, where Sir Keir Starmer is addressing the UN Security Council.
And thank you to our briefers. I want to start by paying tribute to those who see these terrible conflicts and walk towards them with no agenda other than helping those in need. The UN and the ICRC have both lost staff this month in Gaza, Lebanon and Donetsk. More than 200 aid workers have been killed so far this year, including British citizens. Their humanity should illuminate the work of this council. Because we have heard again today just how dire the situation has become. The Security Council must deliver its responsibility for global peace and security. So I want to use this meeting to call to action in 3 key areas. First, we need to renew the international consensus on delivering humanitarian support. This should be a bare minimum, yet too often we're falling short. We must address the situation in Gaza. The 7th of October was the bloodiest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. I utterly condemn the terrorist actions of Hamas. The ordeal of the hostages and their loved ones continues almost a year later. 6 of them were killed in cold blood just a few weeks ago. So I say again, let the hostages go. And we must face up to the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza that continues to deepen by the day. Israel must grant humanitarian access to civilians in line with its obligations under international humanitarian law. There can be no more excuses. Israel must open more crossings, allow vital life-saving aid to flow, and provide a safe environment for the UN and other humanitarian organisations to operate. The civilian suffering in Gaza is beyond belief. So we have restarted our funding to UNRWA. We're supporting UK Med to operate their field hospitals, and we're supporting UNICEF to deliver water, healthcare and specialist treatment for malnourished children. But the most fundamental need is even more basic. They need the fighting to stop. The situation in Sudan also demands our urgent attention. Millions are facing emergency or famine conditions, exacerbated by deliberate attempts to prevent aid reaching those in need. This is now the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today, and the worst displacement crisis, with over 10 million people driven from their homes. It also risks destabilising South Sudan and Chad, which are already suffering their own humanitarian crisis. The UK has doubled its aid for the victims of this war to almost £100 million, but much more is needed. The world must step in. Second, I call on the Security Council to seek political solutions that can break repeated cycles of violence like that in the Middle East. The region is on the brink. We need an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Lebanese Hezbollah, and the implementation of a political plan which allows Israeli and Lebanese civilians to return to their homes to live in peace and security. That security will come through diplomacy, not escalation. There is no military solution here, nor is there a military-only solution to the conflict in Gaza. This Council must demand, again, an immediate, full and complete ceasefire in Gaza with the release of all the hostages. We need a political route to that agreement which provides a bridge to a better future, a credible and irreversible path towards a viable Palestinian state alongside a safe and secure state of Israel. That is the only way to provide security and justice for both Israelis and Palestinians. In June, the UK brought a resolution to this Council on the war in Sudan, calling for both parties to commit to a ceasefire. I repeat that call today. The warring parties must engage in ceasefire talks. We support the Secretary-General's envoy in his efforts towards peace. We must keep working to bring this war to an end, and we must ensure that those responsible for committing atrocities are held accountable. And this leads me to my third and final point. We must ensure accountability for those violating the UN Charter, and this Council must recommit to the values it sets out. Now, this should go without saying. Yet the greatest violation of the Charter in a generation has been committed by one of this Council's permanent members. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal. It threatens global security. It's caused colossal human suffering. Over 35,000 civilians have been killed or injured, 6 million forced to flee, and almost 20,000 Ukrainian children forcefully deported, kidnapped, to put it bluntly. I think of Yaroslav Basilevich, whose wife and 3 daughters were killed earlier this month by a Russian strike on civilians in Lviv. And I wonder how Russia can show its face in this building. 600,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded in this war. And for what? The UN Charter, which they sit here to uphold, speaks of human dignity, not treating your own citizens as bits of meat to fling into the grinder. Russia's war has triggered a global energy crisis and a global food crisis, causing hunger in the Horn of Africa. They entered into a UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal, then withdrew. They tried to block the Pact for the Future. Now the world looks on as Russia deepens its military ties with the likes of North Korea and Iran. There can be no equivocation here. They must be held accountable. Aggression cannot pay. Borders cannot be redrawn by force. Russia started this illegal war. It must end it and get out of Ukraine. We stand with the 89 countries who made clear at the Swiss Peace Summit that Ukraine's territorial integrity must be the basis of any just and lasting peace. Any process that does not recognise this will only be used as a pretext by Russia to regroup and come again. President, in this moment of deepening conflict, the world looks to this Council more than ever to provide leadership for peace, preserve our collective security, and protect the most vulnerable. The United Kingdom will always play its full part in fulfilling that responsibility. Thank you.